So it's Monday in London and we have a few phones today to compare. We have the iPhone 16 Pro Max, the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, the Pixel 9 Pro, and just for extra measure, we're going to chuck in the new Sony flagship as well. And we're going to compare them. I've got the phones on me, I've got a makeshift rig, and we're going to see how that goes down. Hope you guys enjoy it. But first, let's cue the specs on the screen. All right, back in the studio, time to review all the content that we've captured on all the devices. And as always, we're going to start with photography, then video, and so on. I'll try and timestamp some of these stuff as well, so it makes it easy for you guys to go through them, go back, whatever you want to do. Let's start with ultra wide angle shots. So we have the iPhone 16 Pro Max, the Pixel 9 Pro XL, Galaxy S24 Ultra, Xperia 1 Mark 6. Hopefully you guys have seen the specs before this, so you can kind of have that in mind as well when it comes to actually judging this with your own eyes as well as mine. So all this is just my opinion. You might see this and think something completely different as to what they look like, but let's go for it. So with ultra wide angle shots, my issues always things like distortion and whether it's overly distorted or anything like that. And I think they've all done a really good job at keeping things nice and straight and still looking good here as well. So I think they've done a good job. And one of the ways you can tell is if you look right to the bottom of the shots, you can see that the railing there is still pretty much straight across the board. So that's really good. If you look at the Shard, which is that pointed building there, in case you guys are not from London or know London, that's the Shard. If you look at the Shard as well, you can sort of tell by the ultra wide, by the way that it's tilted forwards or back. And I think all the devices have done well in that area. The next thing to look at is the colors and how it's been reproduced, and also the temperature as well. Color temperature here, you can't really judge because every device have their own color science and the way they do it, and everyone have their own preferences and stuff like that. But if I just look across here, you can tell that S24 Ultra looks a bit cold. Actually, they all look a bit cold and gray, but the one that stands out to me as natural would be the iPhone here. I think the iPhone just reproduces everything pretty much as I saw it, I experienced it while I was out there. We look at the Pixel 9 Pro XL. I think it's done a great job as well. Again, reproduced that well. A bit just on the bluer side. So if you look at the building, it's a lot more blue or bluer, if that's the word, compared to the other guys. And then we look at the S24 Ultra as well. It's punching out the color, which is the main color here is the blue color. It's punching that pretty much. And then we look at the Xperia 1 Mark 6. This one just, I'm not sure what's going on here. There's a lot of gray going on. It doesn't know how to mix the blue properly and stuff like that. So that will probably be the bottom of the pile here for me when it comes to the ultra wide angle photos. So the next one here, as you can see, if we look at the dynamic range here, I don't know. I think some of them do really well, some of them don't. So if we look at the color of the bus on the Xperia 1 Mark 6, for example, the red bus on there looks good, although very contrasty. And then we look at the S24 Ultra, you can see that it's got a nice mix of everything really well. Again, just on the colder sides in terms of color temperature. And we look at the Pixel 9 Pro XL, all round good, and 16 Pro Max, again, looks really good, but a bit on the shadowy side. It's got more shadow in there compared to the other ones, I'd say. But again, I think they've all done really well here. So I wouldn't say it's not too much bad things to say there. Next up, let's look at the 1X. So this is the main camera, and this should give us the best of the best from each manufacturer here. So we start with the 16 Pro Max. You can see it's nicely represented. This is very natural to what I saw in person. So you can see the gray reflected very well on the Shard, and the blue sides of the sky is reflecting really nicely as well. So it's not trying to overcompensate or make the building fully blue or fully gray or anything like that. So that's really good. The building colors looks good as well. The brown on the building looks really good. That's the brown that I saw. We look at the Pixel 9 Pro XL, we start to notice that it's trying to be more brightness biased. So it's trying to make everything as bright as possible rather than consider things like the color temperature and stuff like that. So as a result of that, you now notice that the brown building has got like a red tint to it, if you look closely. So it's not accurately represented in that area. And then we look at the Galaxy S24 Ultra. This one is trying to do its best to balance everything. So the building color looks good, but it's lacking contrast and shadows. The Shard itself is representing the reflection from the sky properly, which is good as well. But a bit, again, on the brighter side, which then starts to lean on having a washed out image a little bit, but not fully washed out. We look at the Xperia 1 Mark 6, again, very accurate. I think that one for me is very close to the 16 Pro Max here. The only difference here would be that the contrast and shadow levels are kind of different on both devices there. But I think those two would be a really good one here for me in terms of the color reproduction, the way that it looks nice and balanced, and I think it's done really well there. And then just to play with the lighting in terms of the light direction, we look at another 1x photo here. So we pointed the camera in a different direction here. So you can see the way he's handling the dynamic range here. For example, we know what dynamic range is, you know, the foreground, the background. We're trying to balance the lighting and the colors as well. And we see that the 16 Pro Max does really well here again, in terms of how it looks. You can see it's got lots of shadows in it though. So you might want to bring that out afterwards if you're going to edit it or anything like that. Pixel 9 Pro XL, nicely balanced. Although if you look towards the end, towards the tower bridge, it's starting to look a bit washed out on that far end of the photo. The S24 Ultra looks nicely balanced, I think. It's not too washed out, it looks good. Nice detail in there. And the Xperia Mark 6, I think all round, I love the detail in this one. It looks really good. I think it's represented the scene properly. If you look at the tower bridge on the right, on the far end, again, this comes in very close to what I can see on the 16 Pro Max. So again, those two for me are probably my favorite in this shot. Next, we'll look at 2x across the board, and I think they've all done really well. The things that you notice across all of them though is differences in contrast level, detail and color reproduction. So if we look at 16 Pro Max, it's again on the shadowy side, it's darker a little bit, but very natural is what I saw. And then Pixel 9 Pro XL, again, biased on the brighter side, but then it's trying to, you know, artificially bring out some of the detail there too much. So if you look at London Bridge Hospital on there, you can tell that it's been over sharpened a little bit. So it's then starting to affect the rest of the building, which I'm not a fan of what's going on there. S24 Ultra, all round, I think that's very accurate. It looks really good as well. The building is brighter compared to, say, the 16 Pro Max, as you can see. And then we'll look at the Xperia 1 Mark 6. Again, all round, just reproduces it really well. It's more on the saturated side though, which I was expecting that from the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, but the Xperia 1 Mark 6 makes it a bit more saturated a little bit, pops it a little bit, especially if you look at that building where it says London Bridge Hospital. If you look at that color, it's more on the orangey side compared to, say, the 16 Pro Max and the rest of the devices on the screen. Let me know what you think. Before we move on to this one thing to bear in mind is previously on the Samsung S24 Ultra, that was 2x. 2x is not actually optical on there because it's still pretty much high res though, because it takes the center of the sensor to reproduce that. But now we're going to 3x on the S24 Ultra, which is optical. So here we can see more details. It just looks pretty much, it's really good. So that's when it comes to life, when it uses that optical zoom there. Next, we zoom in further. So we have 5x zoom here. The only difference here, one thing to point out is Xperia 1 Mark 6 doesn't have 5x mode. You can 5x it, but that's digital. But this one gives you that 3.5x, so we're stuck to that for this just to see what that compares like. And here we see how they use, you know, digitization to make it software to bring things, detail out into life. So 16 Pro Max does really well here. I love all round everything. The still flag looks really good as well, captures that with a lot of detail. The colors are good as well, the building, everything. And then we look at the Pixel 9 Pro XL. It looks a bit on the brighter side again. It's trying to make it as bright as possible every time, which it's not necessarily a bad thing, but as a result of that, what you start doing is losing detail and things start to look a bit fake. And then we look at the S24 Ultra, all accurate again, brighter than the other ones, or well, not as bright as the Pixel 9 Pro XL, but it's brighter compared to the 16 Pro Max here. But again, details are still there, looks good. Xperia 1 6, again, looks good here because it's using that 3.5x. So it looks really good, the details are there. I'm not going to complain there at all. The sky has a bit more detail as well compared to the other ones. It's not as overly highlighted. The highlights are not blown out basically, so it looks much better. S24 Ultra, actually, the highlights are gone. The sky, you can't even tell if it's a grey day or blue day or whatever it is anymore on that one compared to the others. But that's pretty much that one. And then for good measures, we look at 5x on all of them. So now the Xperia 1 6 is now 5x as well, but you can tell this is just not the one. It's still there, it's still got a bit of detail, but if you were to zoom into the clock on the building, you start to lose detail completely because that's not using the optical zoom anymore here. So that's something to bear in mind. Beyond the 5x, we have 10x on the S24 Ultra, which means you can zoom a bit further. So if you look at this shot here, it's still pretty much detailed. So you can see the strings on the building there. You can see the writing, which I think it said raised cam shared 13 meters from fence. So you can still pretty much read and make out exactly what that is. And if we look at the Xperia 1 Mark 6, which is capable of 7.1x, you can't really make out the text, but now that I know what it says, it's easy for me to make out what it is. But if I was to look at that at first glance straight away, you won't be able to make that out properly on that one. So the point of putting this up is because 10x is looking good on the S24 Ultra. I like that they've included it, so you can play a bit more. It just gives you more option in terms of zooming in. And then we decided to go full on all of them to see what their maximum zoom ranges are. So for example, the S24 Ultra has that space zoom, which can do 100 times. Is it needed? No, because you can't really use that shot, to be honest. And we look at the 16 Pro Max. You can see all the digitization going on. It's noisy as well. And then we look at the Pixel 9 Pro XL. It's the same thing, although has a bit more detail because they've used software to fill in the gaps and make it look as good as possible. S24 Ultra, like I said, is just unusable. Obviously, you can tell the time because it's big on that one, but the actual detail, the fine detail on the letters towards the bottom left of it, of the clock, you can't even make out what it is, but obviously you know what it is, but you can't make out what it is by looking at that. And then the Xperia 1.6 is just totally bad. There's lots of fringing, there's all sorts going on. We could be here all day long just going through everything that's wrong with that shot, but that's pretty much there just for the sake of adding it in. And the next thing is I wanted to talk about what I'm going to start doing it in the comparison videos is skin tone test, because it's a big deal. Sometimes cameras don't get skin tones right, so I thought let's see how they all kind of handle that. So we look at 1x skin tone here. We'll see 16 Pro Max looks really good. It's not trying to do anything funny with my skin at all. It reproduces it very well, accurately well. I like that. And then we look at the Pixel 9 Pro XL, again, on the brighter side in terms of the bias. You can see he's trying to just light everything up. So now my skin doesn't really show you the brownness of it, the darker side of it. It's kind of just, it's not accurate. And then we look at the S24 Ultra, the same thing. It doesn't really know what it's doing. My arms look different color to my face, and the skin tone is just not there. And it's got some lots of airbrushing going on as well, my forehead. So you can't really see that line. I've got like tiny faded line a little bit. It's kind of brushed it away. Xperia 1.6, it's got that pink reddish tone to my arms. If you see my arms there and my face as well, the tone is just not correct. It's just, I don't know what it's doing there because the colors are just all over the place. So that's that. And then we look at 1x again with a backlit situation. So we're shooting with the light behind us here to see what's getting prioritized over the other here. So if we look at the 16 Pro Max, we can see again, skin tone is now a lot darker because generally I think Apple there's lots of shadows in Apple shots in general so far from what we've seen. So you can see here, like it's not that it's not accurate, it's just that it's a lot darker compared to when it's not backlit, which makes sense because backlit makes your shot darker. And then we look at the Pixel 9 Pro XL. Again, it's now fully compensating everything to make it as bright as possible. As you can see there, it looks a bit more washed out now. It's got like too much haziness to it. And then we look at the S24 Ultra. It looks better, but it's picked out the color from my jeans, my trousers. It's now making it a bit green. It's got like this green tone to the whole thing. So I think it's just picked a color and then try to blend some sort of brightness to it to compensate for that as well, which is annoying. And then we look at the Xperia 1.6. Again, it's got that red tone to it, red purpley or pinkish tone kind of thing to it, which I don't understand where that's coming from. So that's definitely not good for the skin tone test there. Next, let's talk about selfies. Everyone loves selfies, right? So as you can see across the board again, let's go from right to left this time. So we start with the Xperia 1 Mark 6. It's got that red sort of tone to it again. I don't know what's going on with it, Sony here. And it's got a bit more haziness to it. So it's not that detailed in terms of what's going on. And then we look at the S24 Ultra. It's doing a lot of processing here. So you can see my face is being over sharpened. You can start to see what looks like my skin pores when it's not my skin pores at all. I don't know what's happening there. I keep saying this. We look at the Pixel 9 Pro XL, very bright again. In fact, too bright. You need to tone that down a bit. And then we look at the 16 Pro Max. I think that's my favorite one here. It's very accurate in terms of what it looks like. Skin tone's great. It's not overly sharpened as well. It just handles that very well. Next, portrait. Let's look at Selfie Portrait here. And different focal length and how wide they are, but that doesn't take away from the shot itself. So 16 Pro Max has a lot more in detail in terms of the background. So there's not a lot of blurring going on here. Although with all of them, I think all of them or most of them, you can, after the fact, change the level of aperture or bokeh if you want to do that. But this is just straight out of the phone. There's no tweaking or anything like that just to see. But as you can see, there's lots of details in my shirt. All the creases in the t-shirt comes out really well. The shadow's nice as well. The skin tone's good. I really like what's going on there. Look at the Pixel 9 Pro XL. It's a lot brighter. Lots of detail in the t-shirts as well. Nice separation from some parts of my body, but it struggles with the top part where my head is and my hair. As you can see, there's almost blending in with the building. S24 Ultra has done a great job in terms of balancing the blurry background, the bokeh here. The separation between me and the background looks really good as well. I think that's really good. It's done a great job there. Xperia 1 Mark 6, Separation on this is probably the best out of all of them. If you look at it very well, nice blurry background as well. Apart from the skin tone again here, the skin tone is on the purpley side. I don't know what's going on. So it's kind of overly doing that there. Next, we have RAW photography. So all of them can shoot RAW, but in different megapixel counts. So for example, 16 Pro Max can shoot 48 megapixel RAW. Pixel 9 Pro XL can do 50. Galaxy S24 Ultra can do 50 and more, but we're gonna stick to 50. Xperia 1.6 can do 12 megapixel, which is weird. I hope I'm not doing that wrong. Let me know in the comments below, but what was coming up on the device was 12 megapixel and I couldn't find another way to bump that up, even though the phone itself, I think, is a 48 megapixel sensor. But as you can see, different levels here, but the point of RAW photos is you can go back and edit them. But straight off camera for RAW, there's loads of detail. I love that you get loads of details. The S24 Ultra starts to give you some over sharpening in some sense. If you look at the water, you can see how over sharpened it is compared to the other ones. The Xperia 1.6, I love the way that the light shimmers against the light. It accurately represents that, which is good. The Pixel 9 Pro XL, boy, the water looks good, but not as, it wasn't that dark in real life. I think the one that represents everything overall accurately is probably 16 Pro Max. Here, as you can see, like the water's good, the building's good as well. So you don't actually have to tweak a lot on that one, but you can tweak it after the fact. And then we go to the highest resolution across all the devices again. So here we have Xperia 1 Mark 6 in its full glory. But the thing that you notice on this one straight away is oversaturation here. So if you look at the shard, it just looks too blue. It's basically taking the blue from the sky and just thought, yeah, let's make everything blue and cold and stuff. So that's not the one, but it's high res, so you might still be able to edit it after the fact as well. But the rest of the shots is just lots of details in them. The one thing that the Samsung S24 Ultra has over the other guys is that 200 megapixel. So you can shoot at 200 megapixel as well with all the pixel binning technology and so on and so forth. You can get really nice detail, but a lot of it is just over sharpening and artificially done as well. So it's not necessarily a good thing. Is it needed? I don't think so. Next up, macro. Macro is a funny one to me because each device handles it differently. I didn't tap on the screen to focus on any part. I just wanted to see what it comes out straight out of the camera. If you look at the 16 Pro Max, it's very bright in terms of the general photo. So you start to lose some detail in those seeds there. When you look at very closely to them, you start to lose some detail. The Pixel 9 Pro XL has lots of fringing. So it's like it's picking out really minute parts of the flower there to put them in focus rather than trying to make the whole thing a macro shot. So you can see that we're losing details in some bits. Some bits are blurry, some bits are in shots and sharp and focused. So that's something that's to bear in mind there. You can see the blurry background as well is not, I don't know, it's just not there. And then the S24 Ultra here, it looks really good. I think this is probably my favorite one out of this because it's controlled the brightness levels properly and the contrast and the shadows, and also the colors look really good as well. I think that was probably my favorite one here. Xperia 1 Mark 6, I think it's focused towards my finger more than anything else on here for the macro, and then the top left as well of the flower is focused a bit on that side as well. So I don't know what he's trying to focus on here, but it's not the best of the macro shots out of all the four. Next, portrait shots. So here we have 1x across the board, but the Pixel has 1.5x for portrait, hence why it's not as further back compared to everyone else. I think they've all done a great job here. We can't knock it. The one that probably didn't is probably the Xperia 1.6. I mean, starting with the writing on my t-shirt, what's going on there? The product of immigration, you can't really see. It's kind of blurring everything out because it's struggling to separate the black lettering from the white t-shirt, and then the creases are all over the place as well. So that one straight away it just fails there. But if we do look at the face though, the shape of my head, it's got a nice separation from the background, which isn't too bad. So it's not all bad, but as you can see there with your eyes. And then S24 Ultra, I think it's done a great job. It's a bit hazy though, so you might have to dehaze that if you want to edit it after the fact. So we can see the effects of that. The Pixel 9 Pro XL looks absolutely fantastic. You can see there, nice separation. Apart from the hair, towards the hair, back of my hair there, it didn't really separate it very well, which is a shame. But I think overall, it's done a great job there. And then we look at the 16 Pro Max, very natural all around. Great separation from the hair, my face as well, the skin tone, the creases on the t-shirt and everything that's on there. The lettering is managed to make sure everything looks as accurate as possible. So that's a good one. And then we look at 2x portrait across the board again. Look at my arms to begin with. So you can see all the skin tones across all of them. And I think the one that's done a good job in that area would be the S24 Ultra, and the 16 Pro Max has done a good job at skin tone there. S24 Ultra looks a bit washed out just a little bit. Xperia 1 Mark 6, again, skin tones all over the place. Looks a bit red, purpley again. It's too bright. I don't know if it's trying to compensate for the skin or whatever it is. You can see the background as well. It's just washed out. And then Pixel 9 Pro XL looks good in the background. The separation's good apart from the hair again. It didn't manage to separate that properly. And then we have loads of shadows in the 16 Pro Max. It looks a bit more accurate, especially the way the light is actually is coming from where my face is lit. The part of my face that's lit up, that's where the light is pointing. So it's done a really good job at making sure the light is separated from the shadows on my face as well. Because if you were shooting portraits in a studio, these are the things that you adjust the light to manage and shoot accordingly. But here, where we can't control the light, you want the camera to be able to light up the right part of the face and cast shadows in the right part of the face as well. So the iPhone has done a great job there. Onto low light photography. So here is ultra wide angle lens for the low light photography. And I think all around again, props to all of them. They've done a great job here. And it's actually hard to look at it and go, one's better than the other, picking different things. But if I was to get picky on this one, it would be the highlights on the light in itself and the flare on the light. So if you look at the 16 Pro Max, I think overall looks really good. The lighting, the highlights on the lights it's not too detailed. It's kind of very bright. So that's probably the only thing I'll say on that one. And then the Pixel 9 Pro XL, you can't really tell the detail on the lamp at the head, at the top, because it just looks at it when that's bright. Yeah, just make it bright. There's no detail there. The S24 Ultra, really nice. The flare, yes, you might like it, you might not like it, but it's the detail in the lighting. It looks really good. I think it's captured that really well. And then we'll look at Xperia 1.6 in this low light situation. This is very close to the Pixel 9 Pro XL in terms of overblowing that light, but you get more detail in the radar. So that's probably a good or bad thing. I don't know, preference thing. Onto 1X in low light. Here you can really tell by the writing where it says Whiskey Ginger. So if we look at the 16 Pro Max, you can still make out where the lettering is. The highlights are not too overblown. It's nicely lit as well. And then we'll look at the Pixel 9 Pro XL. It's done a great job at the lettering as well. You can easily read it. It's good. It's not too bad. But you will see that the barber light on the left, just the left of where it says whiskey, you can't really tell the difference in the colors anymore. So for example, it's red and blue. That's not even red and blue anymore. It's just washed out. S24 Ultra reproduced everything really well. You can read the lettering. You can even zoom in further to where it says the groomsmith and still be able to make out what that says. The lighting on the barber lighting thing, or the bar lighting, whatever that is. The red and blue, the stripes, looks good. Xperia 1.6, again, I think it's done well here actually, surprisingly. I sound surprised, but it's starting to lack a bit of accuracy in the red and blue stripes, but you can still make out what that one is, and the lettering as well. You can make out what the lettering is. So not so bad for the Xperia there. Well done. And then 2X. This one, you can see the lettering on all of them, but if you zoom in, you see the blurriness on the lettering. So for example, where it says Groomsmith on the S24 Ultra, for example, it's starting to lose a bit of detail in that. But Whiskey Ginger, you can see all of them. The colors are different though. The color reproduction on all of them are a bit different. I think the Pixel 9 Pro XL, the red on there looks a bit more red, and the Xperia 1.6 as well looks more red than the other ones. S24 Ultra, it looks a bit dull, which again is surprising because usually Samsung are very good at making things look very saturated. 16 Pro Max looks really good. Everything looks very accurate in terms of the production of lighting as well. If you look at the red and blue stripes again, it's very good. It's not, the highlights are still there compared to the other ones. But let me know what you think. Next, let's talk about videos. So they can all shoot 4K at 30 frames per second, for example. So it's good to, let's compare that, what they can all do here. So if you look at this video across the board, they look good. There's no problems there at all. Nice and steady as well. But you start to notice color differences across the board. So Xperia 1 Mark 6 looks a lot more gray and washed out compared to the other ones. 16 Pro Max looks very accurate. It's exactly what my eyes saw. The water, the Thames look accurate, same as the S24 Ultra. I think they're very similar there in terms of producing the colors very well. You can read the lettering on the London Eye River Cruise. The Shard looks good as well in terms of the reflection of the right side of the sky. So when it's gray, where it's blue as well. And then we go all across to the other side of the Thames. You can sort of see the colors again, looks good. They're very good actually across the board, apart from the sky colors are different from all of them. So it's just down to preference there again. The tree colors are different. So you can start to see they're all sharp. If you look at the tree, apart from the Xperia 1.6, it's not as sharp on the tree. Like the grain, the strands on the stems and stuff like that, it's not as accurate. You can see the color of the jacket of the couple walking up the stairs as well. Xperia 1.6 doesn't look that good. Again, looks good on the 16 Pro Max, looks good on the Pixel 9 Pro. But yeah, let me know what you think of that one. Speaking of colors on all of them, so I pointed at the jacket here, which is orange. So you can sort of see the colors in terms of how different they are. 16 Pro Max has done well, Pixel 9 Pro has done well, S24 Ultra is on the washed out side, Xperia 1.6 is on the washed out side, is not as orange as it should have been. On the ultra wide, 16 Pro Max looks good, 9 Pro XL looks good as well, although a bit darker. Blue is bluer in the sky. S24 Ultra, well balanced in terms of saturation and not overblowing things. Dynamic range is good on there as well. And then we look at Xperia 1.6, it just looks like, I don't even have to describe this. It's just easy, it's washed out, it's not the one. But out of all of them, I think the 16 Pro Max, Pixel 9 Pro, S24 Ultra has done really well with the ultra wide angle lens here. I think anyone who buys these devices will be happy with the result here. On the 2X, they all look good apart from the Xperia 1.6 here again. It's just washed out. I don't know what Sony's done to their color science there and how sharp the lenses are. But if you look at the 16 Pro Max, it looks really good. You can see the colors there, nice and bright and just really reproduce well. You can see the Thames color is good as well across Pixel 9 Pro as well, S24 Ultra. So I think those three, they've done really well. I can't really complain there at all. Yeah, it looks good. But the Xperia 1.6, no. You notice that 2X more as well when you start to zoom into the tree and you look at the Xperia 1.6, you can't even make out what's going on with the tree there. S24 Ultra over sharpened, Pixel 9 Pro XL over sharpened as well. 16 Pro Max looks a bit more on the natural side, so it looks really good, not over sharpened, not overly done. It's good. And then we've got the 5X where the Sony is 7.1X. You can see here, the tree is gone. It looks like you're shooting on some old camera. S24 Ultra over sharpened, Pixel 9 Pro slightly over sharpened, but not too bad. The color reproduction is different across the board. So the tree is more accurate in terms of color on the Pixel 9 Pro XL compared to the other guys on here. So the S24 Ultra and the Pixel 9 Pro are very close into accuracy on the color. The 16 Pro Max is more on the dull side, so you can probably do some warmth, add some warmth to it afterwards or whatever. But the Xperia 1.6 is the loser in this equation. Then we'll stick them all on 5X, and again, you can start to see the lettering on the bottom of the screen. You can still make out what it is on the 16 Pro Max and the Pixel 9 Pro XL, and somewhat on the S24 Ultra. On the Xperia 1.6, you can't really make out what it is. And then we look at the writing as well. It says London Bridge Hospital. Xperia 1.6 is all washed out, and the other ones are very, very detailed. The S24 Ultra though looks more digitized in terms of processing compared to the other one. So that's something that I've noticed there. Then we look at the boat sailing across. You can still see the people on board as well, apart from the Xperia 1.6. You can't really notice what's going on. You can almost make out the writing as well on the flag. Again, showing you that 5X is where it's at in terms of detail. So you can still get good detail across the board there, which is good, apart from the Xperia 1.6. You notice the difference more when you see this guy with a backpack with the guy running next to him. Xperia 1.6, is he wearing a backpack in that one? We don't even know. And then the other one, you can see that, you can see his tanned legs very accurately represented on the rest of the devices. So the 16 Pro Max, 9 Pro XL and the S24 Ultra there. Looks really good. Nice detail across the board there. Then we go across to the maximum digital zoom. This one, I don't know why you'd need to zoom in this hard and stuff anyway, but let's just talk about it. Stabilisation goes out the window on most of them, but they do enough to keep it nice and stable. So the Pixel 9 Pro XL struggles with stabilization here. Xperia 1.6 struggles as well. The S24 Ultra and the 16 Pro Max, they do really well with keeping things nice and steady, nice and stable. And you can still sort of make out some of the detail. You can see the number 7 on the van that goes across on the Pixel and the iPhone, but not so much on the other two. And then we go further to see this guy turn around and we'll see his face. Pixel does really well, iPhone does really well, S24 does really well as well, Xperia 1.6 not so much. So this is an audio sample from the microphones on all the devices, just to see which one picks up which one better. So that's what you think in the comments below. And one of the features that we have on the iPhone for this one is the fact that it can also do spatial audio, and it can use all those microphones individually to record sound as well. So after the fact, on the iPhone, you'll be able to change where the audio focuses as well, which is pretty cool for the iPhone. But anyway, let us know what you think about the audio quality. It's windy as well, so it's a good test to see if they still pick up the audio as well based on how windy it is. But yeah, let us know. And then we'll look at how quickly they focus or refocus when I put my hand in front of the camera. I think here there's not much to say because they all do really well at refocusing on my face as soon as my hand moves out of the camera lens. So this is the front-facing camera on all the devices. Again, picking up audio as well as just the picture in general. So we're gonna see how that looks like in a second. But yeah, this is what it looks like. If I was to judge just looking on the screen, I would say the Sony looks washed out, the Samsung looks okay. Pix looks very good on the skin tone, and the iPhone as well. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of the selfie video. I think initially I thought one was better than the other, but as soon as you start switching the light angle and stuff and you see it on a bigger screen like this, you start to notice that actually the S24 Ultra here does much better on the skin tone versus the other one, which I thought was initially different. Looking at the phone screen itself, Xperia 1.6 doesn't look great at all, too hazy, too washed out looking. Pixel 9 Pro XL starts to mess around with the skin tone and how it looks. It's starting to look a bit cartoony, which is weird. 16 Pro Max then depends on the light direction to determine what your skin tone looks like, how detailed it is. But generally, I think I'll probably say S24 Ultra looks much better in this one compared to the other one. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Next, we talk about cinematic video. They've all called it different things like bokeh video, portrait video, whatever. But if we look at this, it looks really good, nice and smooth, the way that it works. And you can see the separation as well in real time in terms of the video trying to separate the background, creating that blurry effect. And I think they've all done a fantastic job of doing that when it comes to the cinematic level. But where they all differ is like the color reproduction. You can see the backgrounds, the color of the black or the gray in the sky is different across the board. The skin tone color looks different as well. You can see just different colors across the board. Xperia 1.6 has that red tone again still. So it's just the same story when it comes to the skin tone across the board here. But for cinematic video comparison purposes, I think they've all done really well in separating my skin or my face or my body from the background. So it's not much to knock out of all of them when it comes to the cinematic stuff. One advantage that the S24 Ultra does have over the other one is being able to shoot at 8K at 30 frames per second. But to be honest with you, it just looks overly sharpened, overly processed, and it just doesn't look good. And I probably wouldn't shout about this one. I probably wouldn't start shooting my 8K videos using the S24 Ultra anytime soon. So yeah, it's not making me think, oh my God, 8K video. Next, we look at slow motion videos. Now on the 16 Pro Max, we can shoot 4K at up to 120 frames per second. So you shoot it, you can have it always on, so you can edit it afterwards and all that kind of stuff, and you can edit afterwards on the rest as well. The Pixel 9 Pro XL can only do this at 1080p. The S24 Ultra can also shoot 4K at 120, and Xperia 1 Mark 6 can only shoot this at 1080p as well. So the difference that you notice in this, yes, they can all shoot the slow-mo footage that looks really nice, so you can slow them down to whatever level you want to do, like 60%, 40%, whatever. But we've stuck them around about the same. And here you can tell that the detail remains in the ones that shoot at 4K. So if you're someone who really values your 4K 120 shots or slow-mo videos, then that might sway your decision in terms of getting the devices. When it comes to stabilization, they've all got different levels of stabilization as well. You can have active stabilization on one of them, for example, but I've kept it on the basic stabilization level that they have because it's not every time that you're going to be changing those levels, and those levels sometimes affect the video quality as well. But straight away, you can just tell that the 16 Pro Max is the best out of all of them when it comes to stabilization. And for me, generally, iPhone has always been the king when it comes to videos. So that wasn't too surprising for me. It just looks really good. The Xperia 1.6 was awful. And the Pixel 9 Pro does okay. S24 Ultra does okay as well. But I think for those two, you might have to bump up the stabilization up like super steady or whatever. But the 16 Pro Max here wins this one. Finally, let's look at low light video. Same again, we went back to the location where we shot the stills. We start with the ultra wide, and you can see there different color reproduction across the board and different way to handle the light flare as well on the screen. But if we were to look at the color reproduction on them, you can tell that the 16 Pro Max does better with the color of the bricks. The Pixel 9 Pro XL, very close in terms of that. But you get more flare in the lights in terms of the halo around the light. And then we look at the S24 Ultra, we get a different kind of flare around the light. The brick color looks accurate as well. And the Xperia Mark 6 looks fully washed out. So it's not the Xperia taking this one. Then we look at 1X, they've all got the lens flare across the board, although the Xperia 1.6 has the most lens flare going on here. And then we go all the way down to the bottom of the screen. You can see the bricks colors look different across the board, but the 16 Pro, the Pixel and the Galaxy S24 Ultra, they do really well at keeping that around about the same in terms of color reproduction. It looks really good. And then we see the letters on the Whiskey Ginger. You can still read that. The highlights are different as well on the red and blue stripes. So you can see Xperia just blows that out to the water. It just doesn't look really well in terms of highlights. But the other ones, they're still look okay. Pixel 9 Pro XL doesn't do really well with the highlights as well on the lights, on the red and blue stripes, which is a shame on 1X. 2X, very similar in terms of lens flare. You can see them there again, but you can see the lettering are different in terms of the sharpness of the detail in the lettering. And if you look further down in terms of dynamic range, you can start to see the hash, where it says hash. The red looks different across the board. So again, it might be a preference thing, but the Xperia 1.6, no. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully you guys have watched all the way to this point. Let me know what you think in the comments below of who wins. I've tried not to sound as biased or saying one wins over the other as much as possible, just because I want you guys to be able to decide for yourself as well by just watching it. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed the video. There are other things that we could have got into, like camera features and what you can do in the settings. Like the iPhone has all the new styles, for example, all the AI features. iPhone doesn't fully have all that officially yet. You can test some of them on beta and stuff like that, but we can talk about that another time. But do look out for the reviews of the Pixel 9 Pro XL and the 16 Pro Max, because those are the areas where I might be able to dive a bit deeper into some of those things when I do the review for those. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please smash the like button, share it, and all that kind of stuff. This has taken a lot of work to put this together, so I hope you guys appreciate it. But yeah, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.